About 3 years ago, I accidentally became a marine conservationist. I was 18, fresh graduate out of high school, and I had no idea that my life would take a 180. Now, of course, when I say accidentally, that's a little bit of a stretch. But this is my dad, this is my father, he's a surfer. Yeah. And if you know anything about surf culture, you know our biggest enemy is sharks. And so if you were to tell 12-year-old me and my dad, probably 10 years ago, that at the age of 20, I would become a shark nanny, I would have said, one, what is that? And two, I would have not believed you. I have been doing environmental activism for about 6 years now, since the age of 15. And by the time I was 18, it had been 3 years. Now, saying that now, it is really easy, 3 years. But in reality, 15 to 18, when you're doing high school as well, and everyone knows there's also personal hiccups, it is a very long time. And activism can also feel like you're playing ping pong against the drapes. But straight out of high school, I decided to continue to do it, and I joined an organization called Youthopia as their community builder. I was working there. We were building programs so that young people could learn from other young people about the Sustainable Development Goals. And I loved just this job, and I loved doing activism. But a couple weeks or a couple of months into my job, I received a link, a message from my old biology teacher. It was a link to a video competition. It was called Why Coexist. And it was a 1-minute video competition. I'm gonna stand here. It was a 1-minute video competition. So you had to make a 1-minute video on why you think we need to coexist with our oceans. Simple. And the winner won a trip to the Seychelles. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that prior to the competition, I had never heard of the Seychelles, despite being pretty good at geography. A cluster of amazing, beautiful islands off the coast of Kenya and Africa. And so I decided, hey, why not? And I made a video. This is a clip from it. I got my dad to take me to Sese, where I'm from, the local beach where I'm from. He filmed it on my somewhat broken little iPhone XR, and I edited it on my phone at home on CapCut, and it was a really badly edited video, and I know this because I sped it up to 1.5 speed so that I can make sure it was at 1 minute, and I submitted it, not thinking anything of it. Now this competition looked like one of those ads that you see on TV. Win a trip on a cruise, or win a car, win a trip to Africa, and you always think that it's a scam because you never see the winner. But this competition in particular had to have a winner. And in 2023, that winner happened to be me. And so I actually also got to bring a friend. And so 5 months after graduating high school, I found myself in the Seychelles with my twin sister learning how to scuba dive on an island dedicated for marine conservation. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And I came back to Indonesia wanting to continue to dive, wanting to find any more opportunity where I could continue to do diving. And finding these opportunities in Indonesia alone is difficult, let alone any other opportunity that is tailor-made for women. And in the end, I ended up receiving a Dive Master Scholarship. Oh, that's us in the Seychelles. In the end, I ended up receiving a Dive Master Scholarship by a dive shop called Blue Corner. It was called their Batty Women's Day Scholarship. Women's Day. It was in honor of Women's Day. It was to increase the local female divers in the area. And I was so honored to be one of their 2023 recipients. And this led to a whirlwind 2 years of a bunch of different projects. One, I want to share with you, I did last year. It was to make a short film on a project called Coral Catch. Can you scroll a little bit higher? Yeah, on a program called Coral Catch. So I made a short film on the alumni of this program. This program offers Indonesian women a 9-week coral restoration scholarship, where they learn from women, where they're living with 4 women, because it's 4 women at a time per batch, and they're trying to educate 100 Indonesian women to become scientific divers. They also get master classes by female entrepreneurs and professionals in the field, and essentially, it is a female-led space. Now you may be wondering, where am I going with this? Well, actually, one of the alumni from Coral Catch, batch 5, was my sister, my twin sister, that I took with me to the Seychelles. And these 2 programs in particular, the Blue Corner Dive Master Batty Women's Day Scholarship and Coral Catch, are only applicable for Indonesian females. Now I want to share with you a story, a conversation that I had about last year. I had a colleague of mine ask me, this is where all the women are from. I had a colleague of mine ask me, why are these opportunities only for women? Why are they excluding men? Doesn't this defeat the whole purpose of gender equality? And considering my Dive Master Scholarship was quite special because unlike others, it had no long contract connected to it. I've often had this question asked by men who would like to apply as well. Why are we excluding men? And I explained to my colleague, this male diver, I explained to him that it's to ensure that women have a space, are in the space. It's not an act of exclusion, it's actually an act of correction. And it struck me that when the men ask me these sort of questions, when they're saying that we are advocating for unfairness, it is actually a discomfort of not being centered. We don't hear the same energy from these men when women are not put in the leadership position, or when they're not given the grants, or when they're pushed out of male-dominated dive shops. It is only when they're not put in the center. And at the end of the day, as a matter of fact, other than these two programs, every other opportunity out there is for everybody, but they're actually tailor-made for men. So it's not why do we have these too many opportunities for women, it's actually why do we have to justify the few opportunities that we do have. And so this man, this guy, this colleague of mine, he kept pushing and kept debating with me, and at some point I started to sob, I started to cry because it got really personal for me. And despite that, he kept going, he kept pushing, and I realized he actually understood my points. He understood very well, but he didn't enjoy it, and he didn't like my points. That's why he kept pushing with me. He also made the argument of men's mental health issue. He said, why do we always talk about women's rights? Why don't we talk about men's issue? Now, of course, I do not dismiss them. They matter. But in the moment, I felt like he was trying to silence me with his arguments. He's trying to invalidate my experience as a female diver in the field. When I said things about the way that when tanky boys and boat captains affect me by things they say like, what is a pretty girl doing working as a dive master? Or what are you going to do once you find a husband? These are things that I've heard many times. He dismissed them, brushed them off, said that they said that I was over-exaggerating. But it's not. I'm not. Because they are isolated comments that women in the field constantly hear. They're actually isolated comments that women in many different fields often hear. So it's not about why there's so many opportunities for women. It's about what would the ocean look like if women were already leading in the first place. Now, a majority of women, these are from the Seychelles, a majority of women in marine conservation didn't get through the front door. They had to carve side doors, or jump through windows, or shimmy down chimneys to make it into the room. And when I got into the room, I realized it's not just about restoring, and it's not just about protecting the ocean, it's actually also about changing the narrative. It's changing who gets to decide who saves the ocean. Now, a lot of people assume, I love this picture, a lot of people assume that marine conservation is this high-tech, glamorous, adventurous career. And in some ways it was. This was us releasing one of the baby leopard sharks in Raja Ampat. But a lot of the times, it is tedious work. It is consistent. You have to be patient in marine conservation. It is very understaffed, as well underfunded and underappreciated. It requires nurturing. And last year, one of the most recent projects that I got involved in was this one. It was called Reshark. It's aiming to repopulate baby leopard sharks in Raja Ampat. And I was there for 2 months as an intern. We would take care of these baby leopard sharks until they were the right size, about 1 meter. They would get their acoustic tag, in layman terms, a GPS, and then we would release them. And over there, we were called shark nannies. I was one of 4 female shark nannies. Now, of course, I prefer the term shark mama, but over there the consensus was nanny. And it was a joke. It was a joke, but it was actually also a statement, a testament to the work that we were doing. Because choosing to care, to nurse, to feed everyday sharks, which are a wild and a vulnerable species, is actually a radical act. And this is the first time we released one of our sharks into the wild as well. It's actually a radical act. Yeah. And another thing, coral restoration. This is something that I often did. It is actually very intimate if you think about it. You're helping a broken ecosystem heal itself again. You're taking these tiny coral fragments and you're tying them onto a frame, and you get excited. It starts with a polyp. And then it's a flash of color, and then it's suddenly fish are around your coral restoration. And then, like last week with Blue Corner, there's a shark using your restoration site as a nursery. It requires deeply caring and being deeply passionate. It also requires consistency. Coral restoration, you have to monitor it weekly, monthly, yearly. In In some places, it needs maintenance. What does that mean? That means going underwater with a toothbrush and cleaning the coral to make sure there's not an overgrowth of algae. In places like Gili with coral catch, and in Makassar, which Shiba Hope grows. This means you have to be deeply caring and passionate about it. You have to be persistent, and you have to have an attention to detail. Now, I believe that this mirrors what most women have been in our communities for generations. The foundation, building, restoring, building a future that we may not live to see. So once again, I think it's not why are there too many opportunities for women, but it's what would it look like what would the ocean look like if women were leading the way in the first place? Now, if we look at this word nurture, what do we often think about? We might think about a mom with her son or daughter, taking care of them, feeding them, putting them to bed. That is definitely an example of nurturing. But femininity and nurturing in the traditional way that we see it does not only belong in the kitchen. I also personally believe it can look like carrying tanks across a high, low tide and then going underwater for 1, 2 hours at a time to clean your coral. It can also mean chasing sharks around for an hour to make sure they eat the right amount of fish. This is something I have to do consistently. And I think I've seen some of the most radical and some of the most fiercest nurturing underwater. Now, the ocean is very difficult to navigate. Conservation in itself is very difficult to do. It takes a long time on land, let alone underwater. A place that physically we're not even meant to indulge in. Being a shark nanny requires a lot of resilience. It requires instinct, intuition, emotional intelligence. Something that we're often told does not belong with science. I remember once one of our shark babies, this one is Christina, and that's Fiju. I remember once one of our shark babies was hiding in a corner. It wasn't eating for a couple of days, and we knew that it was sick. I have a mom instinct, I do, but it's for coral babies and coral nurseries and shark babies. It's for something different. And so I didn't look like I was nurturing nature, but that was the whole point. I believe that femininity can also mean being passionate about something, even if you're told you don't belong there, and choosing to do it anyway. Because the ocean doesn't want to restore itself quickly. You can't push the ocean to restore itself. You need to be patient. You need to have time. You need to wait. You need to be persistent. And I think that's what we bring to the table with marine conservation. Now, I'm not saying there aren't incredible men in the field. No, of course not. This man right here, Andrew Taylor, he is the founder of Blue Corner Dive. He's been doing coral restoration for over 7 years there. Egi Pamungkas, he is my mentor in marine conservation. These are examples of men who I believe lead with humility and deep care. But when people say that the ocean is too harsh, too unpredictable, and too extreme for women, I disagree. I beg to differ. Because I believe that marine conservation is tailor-made for qualities that are often found in femininity, that are often found in women. It requires attention to detail. It requires passion. So I believe that the world has too long been divided by false binaries, by masculinity, femininity, by strength and softness, by emotion and science. I think the ocean, and if anyone has seen David Attenborough's new documentary, the ocean requires all of us. It actually requires both. It requires people who care and are people who are willing to wait. I believe the ocean requires people who will stay, restore, protect, and love the sea back to life. Thank you.